Hello, IT 100 students. We are going to pick up where we left off with our spreadsheet example and start using our data that we've put into tables to make some graphs. Now, before I get into that, I am going to clean up the look of what I have here so far. It is important that if you're going to be presenting data to someone else in an Excel workbook, that you do make it look nice, which is part of the expectations of your project. So I've started some formatting to make things look a little bit nicer here. And I'm just going to fix it up. Now these cells that we did before were just to show you some examples of how to do formulas, but I don't actually want them to be part of my data table right here. So I'm going to take those out, and I'm going to take out this column. This was another example we did of some formulas, so I'm going to remove that for right now, since you all know how to do that, or can watch the last video to see. I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete this. And so now I've cleaned things up a little bit. Now if I did want to add, I know that, for example, in your business letter, many of you included a bottom row that included the total sales number. So for here, it might make sense to have an average price built in. Average in this case makes a little bit more sense than a summation, than a total. And like feedback I gave a lot of you, you might want to bold this so people know that it's different. It's not its own line item. So I'm going to bold it. And then I'm going to do my average. So we can do that formula again. It's just equals average. And then the things we're going to average, I'm just going to select them, close my parentheses, and be done. And then I want this to be in the same format with the borders. So you'll see that the bottoms of these cells aren't bordered. So I can include that, highlight them, and I can add the all borders. And now it looks the way that I want it to look. So for this instance, I want to make a graph showing the price of each good. So if I just put myself in my data table here, I should be able to go to Insert and get some recommended charts. For your project, the charts that you need for the specific data are called out for you. Two of them are going to be bar graphs or bar charts. And two of them are going to, one is going to be a line graph. I'll show you the recommended charts first, and then I'll show you how to go to the specific chart that you want. Sometimes you're not sure how your data is going to work together to make a chart, so the recommended charts can help with that. So here, what we notice is that the average price got included. Now maybe I want to include that in my graph, and maybe I don't. That is up to you. Now, if you were to show sales figures, you might not want to have the total separate because it might look like its own separate category. Like you've got 4 things all adding up instead of 3 that are adding up to one other. So if you were to create a bar chart, my suggestion would not be to have your total, or in this case, we're using an average, included there. If you were doing something like this, the average might be helpful just to see how it looks. This is a bar chart, of course. It's also recommending pie charts. That wouldn't make sense in this case. Pie charts are when you want to compare things. So I want to say, okay, of the total, what kind of percentage are X, Y, and Z? We're not doing that in this presentation, and this example doesn't really lend itself well to that either. So we see some recommended charts. Bar chart is one of them, which is what we're going to use. So I could just settle with exactly how it defaults and choose that and click OK. That's one way to do it. And then my chart will pop up right here. You'll notice that it has a price, that it has a title, which says 2013 price. So that is based on what I titled this. So if I were to change this title, this label for this column, for column B, so I could say prices in 2013. I will update here. So that's one thing to keep in mind when we label our information. And you'll also notice that each of these, the way that we've arranged the data, makes it so that when it goes into the bar graph, everything is labeled properly. So this is why setting up your data is so important. If you set it up correctly like we've done here, and like pretty much everyone did a really fantastic job in the business letter. So if you set it up this way in your business letter and you follow that pattern here, when you put in your sales data, your graph will come out pretty awesome. Now, if you want to change the data, there's a couple ways to go about it. Let's say you don't want this last row in here. I don't want to show the average price. I just want people to see the prices of bread, flour, and milk. And maybe you don't want to show the total because that might be confusing. Couple ways. We could, now that we've got our graph, we can click on any of these bars, and that will give us the data point. And then we can adjust, you see these little dark blue squares? I can adjust it up so that it doesn't include those things. And you can do it over here, although you can see that the graph is not, and it's not necessary. And now I don't have it in my graph anymore. That was pretty easy. Another way to do it, I'll undo that, is we could just start with an entirely new graph. So I could take out this graph and I can say, all right, I'm just going to highlight the information that I want to turn into a chart. And I'm not going to highlight average price and what the average price is. So now that I've highlighted the items that I want, go to Insert, and then let's say I know I liked that bar graph, and then I can just make a bar graph there. And because I haven't included average price, or if you were doing a sum total, the sum total, it wouldn't be included there. So that's another way to do it. So just because you have the data in your table doesn't mean it has to go into the graph that you're making. So that's one way to make a bar graph. Now there are horizontal bar graphs as well. And one quick way, if you want to say, maybe that would look nicer than a vertical graph. I've got my graph here. It's the exact data that I want. I can go up here to change chart type. So if I click change chart type, I can see all the choices over here. So this is beyond the recommended ones, but everything that's possible in Excel. And I can go to, this one is called column when you have the vertical bar chart. Horizontal bar chart is called bar. And you can find that here, and then you can get a preview of what it might look like. And you can choose from a couple of previews. So this one, everything is blue, they're kind of separated. This one, they're different colors, they're clustered together. It's completely up to you what you think looks best. You can also do stacked bar charts. You can see in this one, everything is stacked together. This is great when you do want to show each item, but then also the total. So I can see that if I were to buy each of these products, the milk, the bread, and the flour, I would be spending about $5.50 because everything is stacked up on top of each other, and I can still tell how much each one costs. All of these are examples of bar graphs that are required for some elements in your milestone and in your final project. So you can decide which one you think is best in terms of presenting the data. As long as it's a bar graph, these are all types of bar graphs, bar charts, and the column ones are also all types of bar graphs. And you can see the different ways of doing it. What I would suggest is pick the one that, without being too busy, best represents your data. Because this is a professional presentation, you want it to be simple for, that's not a great one, you want it to be simple for people to understand, but also look nice. We don't want it to be too flashy because it's a business presentation. So just keep those elements in mind as you make your decision. So we'll stick with this basic one for right now that we first created. You can also change the colors very easily without having to select them yourself. While we've got the graph selected, I can go up here to change colors, and I can pick any of these color schemes. I can get orange, green, choose those. If I want to change any individual piece, I can, if I just want to change bread to be green, I can click on, when I click on it once, all three get selected. All of my data items get selected. Then if I click on bread again, just bread will be selected, just that one. And then I can do a couple of things. I can right click, which I think is the easiest, right click on this, and I can select a different color for it. So if I want it to be green, I can just select green right there. And I also want the outline to be green, so it's just a solid green. And I made it a different color. And let's say I want to do the same thing for flour. You'll see if I click on the flour bar, all three get selected, the whole data series. But I just want flour, so I click on it one more time. So it's a little different than a double click. It's click and then click again. And I right click and I choose a different color for flour. Let's say I pick yellow, and then I want the outline to be yellow too. And then I'm done. And now maybe this is a little bit more visually pleasing. So if you want to play around with different colors, this is one way to do it. So this is a simple way to show a bar graph. Now, there is one other graph that you'll have to include, which is a line graph. The idea is exactly the same. You select your data, you go to Insert, and then you choose the line graph. So this is the most basic line graph, and we can see it right there. And then you can adjust the color and the data points as you see fit. But the idea is the same, and the formatting is the same, and all the changes you would make follow the same pattern as we saw in the bar graph. All right, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the general questions area. Thanks, guys.